Hey there, Stephan Kesting from GrappleArts.com. Today's topic, the single most important factor, or the single most important thing in getting your black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it actually applies to any black belt in any martial art, but we're going to confine our conversation to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu just for, because that's what I'm known for. So, the single most important thing to get your black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to just not quit. Now, that is a bit of an oversimplification, and we're going to get into the weeds in a minute, but if you just don't stop, if you just keep on training, then almost everybody, if you've got anywhere near a reasonably able mind and body, you'll probably be able to get your black belt. It may just take you a little longer. I mean, if you're some super talented phenom, some 16-year-old kid who lives at home, whose parents pay all his bills, you can train twice a day, and you spend the rest of the time playing Xbox, and I'm dating myself there, playing Pokemon Go, and eating and sleeping 12 hours a day to recover from all that training, and you already have decent genetics, you can already put your feet behind your head, then you might get your black belt in a lot shorter time. And I hate people like that, but there are people out there who get a legitimate black belt from a legitimate instructor in 3 to 4 years. Now, most people take 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of reasonably hard training to get their black belt. And that's because life gets in the way, right? They can't spend all day, every day, hanging out at the club and watching every last competition video and dissecting how Leandro Lowe did this and how the latest inverted upside down reverse Della worm guard applies it to their game. Most people can't do that. So if you're training hard and with attention and with focus 3 times a week, you can probably do it in about 10 years. So that's a long time to train. And consequently, because it's a long time, a lot of things can go wrong. So there are some reasons that people quit, and that's what I want to spend the bulk of this video or the bulk of this session talking about, is the reasons for people quitting and to some extent what you can do about it. So there are lots of reasons people quit, but I see some a lot more frequently than others. And I think the most common reason that people quit training jiu-jitsu is they get too busy. Maybe when they get started, they're super enthusiastic and they're training 5 times a week and they're having a great time and they spend all their other time looking up YouTube videos of competitors and they're really, really into it. And it's a really cute stage and it lasts a long time for some people. But then a lot of people sort of get busy. They get a job. They get a girlfriend who actually wants some of their time, crazy girlfriends. They get married, they have a kid, they buy a house, they get a mortgage, other time to stories, and all of a sudden, kaboom, they have no discretionary time left at all. They're just, running from appointment to meeting to appointment, and, they're lucky if they can get their ass in the gym a couple of times a week to do jiu-jitsu. You can still get your black belt training a couple of times a week. Like I said earlier, it's just going to take you a bit longer. But what happens is that people, they were progressing pretty fast, right? They were coming along, they were learning new stuff, they were implementing new stuff, they were neck and neck with all the other people in the club. Now they get busy, and all of a sudden those other twerps who keep on training 5 times a week start getting better faster than you. And you stopped getting better as fast as you were. And some people find this super discouraging. They're like, screw it, I'm out of here. If I can't continue getting better as fast as I was, I'm not going to do it at all. And I think this is a completely terrible attitude. I think, obviously you're going to get better way faster if you're training 5 times a week or twice a day, 5 times a week if your body can handle it, than you will training, say, twice a week. But training twice a week is still 1,000 times better than training 0 times a week. If you're training twice a week, your head's still in the game, you're still making progress, like I said, a bit slower. If you can do a little bit of extra physical conditioning, which is something I always go on about, you're going to get the maximum amount of stuff that you can out of that class. It'll also help your progression. And they can squeeze in some additional study with instructional apps, DVDs, videos, private sessions, thinking about it. There are lots of little tricks and tips that you can do to make the most out of those 2 classes a week and continue. The hard part is on your ego. Man, I used to be able to hang with Fred. Fred and I started at the same time, and he'd get a little bit better, I'd get a little better, he'd get a little bit better, I'd get a little bit better, and then all of a sudden I stopped training as often and Fred kept getting better and better and better. Now he kicks my ass every time I train. I hate jiu-jitsu. That's hard on the ego. So If you can put your ego to the side, in this case, ego is the enemy, you can continue to train in jiu-jitsu, you will eventually get that black belt. The next most common reason that I see that people quit jiu-jitsu is that there's a really bad match between their school and them. Maybe they're interested in competing. Maybe they want to compete. And they end up going to a school that does a whole lot of sort of self-defense-y type technique and not very much sparring, if any. Well, that's going to be a bad match. They're going to say, screw it, I hate jiu-jitsu, I'm out of here. Alternately, if they want to do jiu-jitsu for health and for self-defense, but they're at a super competitive school where the only thing guys want to do is compete, and they're going really, really hard and just smashing everybody who comes in through the door, that's also a bad match. Similarly, you end up with, if you're working at a restaurant server at the customer service desk at the Audi dealership, and you're coming in with black eyes every week because you're training at a school with a whole bunch of MMA meathead steroid injecting young punks, all of whom want to fight and want to train UFC, then that's going to be a problem as well. If you got to preserve your body and your good looks, just like my good looks have been preserved, then maybe doing more gi training, maybe not training MMA, and maybe not training with a bunch of meatheads is a good idea. On the other hand, if you want to fight, then you do need that depth and that intensity of sparring. Again, going to a nice simple school where people are just doing it for recreation, that's not a good match either. So there needs to be a match between the school that you train at, which includes the teachers, the other students, kind of the general ethos of the school, and what your goals and desires are. Now, I guess the key point here is if you're going and you're starting to train jiu-jitsu, and all of a sudden you're like, man, this sucks, I hate jiu-jitsu. Wait, before you quit forever, try going to a different school. Try training at a entirely different kind of club. You're going to spend, like I said, about 10 years doing jiu-jitsu. It's worth your while to go around from club to club to club, to spend a couple of weeks going from club to club to club and seeing where you fit the best. Usually at a school, the teacher sets the tone. That's then carried by the senior students who take it to the rest of the student body. So if the teacher's an asshole, usually he'll attract asshole senior students, and then all of a sudden everybody at the club thinks it's cool to be an asshole. So go from club to club to club. If you want to train at a club full of assholes, great, you can pick that club. If you want to train at the club where the rainbow's painted on the walls, a very non-threatening environment, you can train there. If you want something in between, I'm sure you can find it. So before you quit jiu-jitsu forever, go find another school. Now, if you've gone to many different clubs and you're finding I don't like how the people here treat me, I don't like how the attitude at this club, these people were all jerks, well, then maybe the problem is with you, right? Maybe you're the common denominator. Maybe all these other clubs are perfectly good and you're the problem. But assuming that that's not the case, if you hate the club you're at and you're going, I'm going to quit, before you quit, go check out another school, maybe a rather different kind of school or series of schools, and give jiu-jitsu another chance. Maybe it's not jiu-jitsu, maybe it's the school. The final super major reason people quit jiu-jitsu is because of injuries. Now, jiu-jitsu is a contact sport, so injuries are part of the game. There's just no way around it. So if you don't ever want to get injured, well, then take up lawn bowling or something, and you might end up with a bit of tendonitis in the shoulder from all that repetitive bowling. But you're never going to break anything. You're never going to dislocate anything. You're never going to get bruised up badly. Hopefully none of those things happen to you, but you have to be willing to accept the risk of injury. Now, I've talked about this idea before, that there are lots of people out there who would have been super good if they hadn't gotten injured. Once upon a time, I'm making this up, once upon a time there was a grappler named Rodrigo from Brazil. That's a pretty inventive name, who was faster than Marcelo Garcia, more flexible than BJ Penn, more strong than Rodolfo Vieira. Amazing timing, amazing strategy. He was going to dominate the sport, absolutely dominate, crush everybody for 10 years in his weight division and in the open division. Unfortunately, one day he didn't tap to a bad situation, tore his ACL, his MCL, he needed reconstructive knee surgery, and he never trained again. So we don't hear about all the really good people who got injured along the way and dropped out. It's a survivor bias thing. It's like in business books. You read about Steve Jobs, right? And Steve Jobs' management style, and because Apple was a success. We don't read about all the other people who were assholes to their employees, just like Steve Jobs was, whose companies imploded and didn't succeed, right? We only hear about the successes. Same thing with Jiu-Jitsu. We don't hear about the really good Jiu-Jitsu guy who got his knee so badly jacked that he needed reconstructive knee surgery, couldn't afford it, and never trained again. We don't hear about the guy who didn't tap out to a neck crank when some giant idiot Neanderthal decided to apply a catch wrestling neck crank to him in class. He refused to tap, the guy on the bottom, injured his neck so badly, and then never trained again. We don't hear about the guys who dropped out. So injuries are a very real thing, for sure. So number one is preventing injuries. We have written a lot about that on my blog. You can go look at grapplers.com/injuries, plural, to look at some of those articles. But there's some pretty concrete steps you can take to prevent injuries. Don't train with that idiot guy who's always hurting everybody. Just say no. Tap out early when you get put in a bad position. Don't let ego screw you up. Injuries are the enemy, and ego causes a lot of injuries. So, it's way better to tap out and live to train another day than it is to muscle through something, not tap out, and then end up with some stupid injury that you got to spend months or years rehabbing from, and you may never fully recover from. The next major thing is rehabbing your injuries properly. If you break a rib, the universal example of returning to jiu-jitsu too early is a broken rib. Everybody comes back too early, myself included. They injure their rib, they take some time off, they hobble back to class, I'm just going to take it easy, and then they re-injure the rib, and then they have to, take another 6 weeks off, another 8 weeks off. So take the time to heal up properly, seek the right medical aid, and don't stop until you've exhausted all the opportunities. Again, I've talked about this before. If you injure yourself, you owe it to yourself to try to fix the problem. And if the first person you go to doesn't fix the problem, go to a second. If a second person doesn't fix the problem, go to a third. It's, if the chiropractor can't fix your problem, well, go to a physiotherapist. If the physiotherapist can't fix your problem, go to a massage therapist. If a massage therapist can't fix the problem and you try the next 10 things, then maybe go to a surgeon. Maybe. Try everything else first, but you're going to keep on trying the different modalities to recover from that injury. So to circle back where we started, the way to get your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt is to just not quit. And as a parentheses side note, to not put yourself in situations where you are forced to quit completely. So the other thing to keep in mind is that the Jiu-Jitsu black belt and the black belt in any martial art is just really a starting point. It means, yes, you've achieved a certain level of competence. You've gotten to here, but I promise you, the level goes to here. I've been a Jiu-Jitsu black belt for 10 years. It took me, just incidentally, it took me 8.5 years to get it, a pretty serious training. I trained at a very conservative school about grading. On the one hand, I had a full-time job, which made training hard. On the other hand, I did have a pretty strong background in other martial arts, including catch wrestling and submission grappling and judo, which helped. So, I had some plus factors, some minus factors. It took me 8.5 years. Been a Jiu-Jitsu black belt for a little bit more than 10 years. And I'm still learning every time I step on the mat. I come away going, man, that's a great way to show this concept. Or, man, I didn't realize if I put my heel here instead of here, that it would make a big difference. Or, man, if I twist my hips like that, at the very moment that he's coming up, it really off balances him. I come away with little things all the time. So I'm no different from a white belt or blue belt who's learning new techniques every day. I'm just a little bit further down the road. But the road doesn't stop at black belt. The road keeps going a long, long way. So that's an amazing thing about Jiu-Jitsu, is the depth and breadth of this art. You can continue learning an awfully long time. So don't get too fixated on the black belt. Worry much more about the journey. If you're not getting promoted, just focus on being the toughest white belt, the toughest blue belt, the toughest purple belt in the class, and the most technical white belt, the most technical blue belt, the most technical purple belt. Eventually they'll have to promote you if you're kicking the ass of everybody else. If you found this useful and you want some more, then I got some suggestions for you. Number one, most important, I'd sign up for my email newsletter, grapplearts.com/newsletter or grapplearts.com/book. Both of them will get you to the same place. I send out a lot of information by email related to training, related to conditioning, related to injuries, related to strategy, related even to dynamics in a jiu-jitsu class. And I've found that a lot of people tell me that it's very useful. If you don't like what I send you, there's an unsubscribe link at the bottom of every single email. Hit that and I'll be gone from your inbox forever. You can also follow me on Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook. What else am I forgetting here? Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, YouTube, and sort of stay in the loop with a lot of the stuff that I do. So to sum up, train hard, train safe, and do not quit, and you'll almost certainly make it to black belt eventually. But I promise that the journey will be worth it, and I promise it'll be an interesting journey and that you'll be a much better person at the end of it. Take care, and good luck with your training.